Welcome back to our last session at the virtual conference of leaders in compliance. And please let me take 2 seconds to thank you, ISA Guide for the cooperation, especially on the German market, and Gaming in EU for the cooperation on the European market. In the last session, we are going to speak about transaction monitoring, the operation risk management, and the technical solutions for European regulated markets. I think this is a really interesting topic for everyone who is dealing with alerts and who is taking care of the operational compliance. So I'm really happy that we have at this panel Rasmus from Mindway, Stephen, former MRO of William Hill, and now running his own consultancy firm, and Nikolas Lotz from MGT. This question, if you want to ask a question, please use Slido. Please scan the QR code on the left-hand side, and then you can enter your question. And we try to answer the question at the end of the session. Welcome, Nikolas. Welcome, Rasmus. Welcome, Stephen.
Thanks.
So then, my first question goes to Stephen. Stephen, you have worked for a long time as an MRO for very large operators, even with a retail business. So, from your risk management perspective, what behaviors should be flagged by operators, and how similar are behaviors related to immoderate gambling and money laundering?
Yeah, interesting topic. I think that there's always a clear link between sort of AML and the problem gambling topic. I think that it is just really crucial for businesses to really understand the differences, because it can hurt you from a risk management perspective, but also from a commercial perspective. As years have gone on, I think that the type of triggers that we look out for have changed. I mean, you have your standard triggers around time of play, hours of the day, different products. But as time has changed and as companies have built technology or built trigger points to sort of spot that, then potentially it's moved into a new realm of potentially people using, family members' usernames or friends' usernames or mole accounts. And all of this changed drastically, both in the online space and the retail space. I think it's really, really important that firms don't follow sort of a one fit all, because it doesn't work. And what you actually end up doing is you let your good customers, you almost lose some of your good customers along with the customers you're trying to spot. And I think that's really important commercially. From experience, there were so many times when something would be flagged as suspicious from a financial crime perspective, but actually as you worked through that, it was actually someone who did have the funds. They were, legitimate funds, but they were actually funding their gambling in an unsustainable manner. And I think that as we develop and as we understand the changes of these technologies and patterns, it becomes a lot easier. But yeah, it's certainly a moving field. I think, every day's different for MLROs and operational risk managers out there. There's always either a new trick or a new problem that we uncover. And that will continue to happen as technology gets better and patterns change.
Thank you, Stephen, for answering the first question. Really interesting. So I come to my second question. How has operational risk monitoring changed over the past 10 years? To what extent has the need for automated solutions increased, and what are the main challenges associated with automation?
Yeah, so, I think it's changed hugely. I think, and the driver behind that is technology and products. If you look at the gaming space 10 years ago compared to now, and the markets available and the and the products and the technology we have, mobile phones and, gaming on the go, it has changed drastically how, we have to, monitor, but also operationally, because I think that part of the key elements of it is that we've probably gone from a less, there was probably a block of time, I think, when this stuff took place, and it would be sort of business hours. I think it's now 24/7, and that drastically changes how we have to operationalize, not just from a patterns and technology perspective, but also from a staff perspective. The cost of running that, the cost of running effective operational risk has changed. So over time that's always changed. In terms of automation and the challenges, I've always been a believer that automation is key, but it can only work well alongside humans, especially in this space. I think there's a lot of areas where technology and automation can effectively replace a human. But in this element, you're actually looking at a whole massive pool of customers potentially, and clients and individuals are all very different. And it's about trying to find that group of customers that have similar patterns. But then within that group, it's that human element of review. The automation in it can help you get there. Look at, if we take, PEP and sanction screening, for example, and the false positive problem that's always plagued everyone over time, you'd end up hiring 200 staff to look at, a Steve Armstrong. There's 10 Steve Armstrong. Which one's the right Steve Armstrong? It's that type of element. So I think that, it's very much needed. Certainly from my time as an MLRO, we heavily relied on systems. We relied on robotics, but that was to really get us to home in on where the problem was, rather than trying to fix the problem or spot the problem. It was really to say, okay, we've got 1 million people. Actually, I haven't got staff to look at 1 million people. Let's get that down to a group of 100, 200, and then let's start looking at them and deep diving into them. And that will help you commercially, because you're not stopping everyone. And it will also help you from a risk management perspective, because your actual trained staff are looking at the problem rather than, rushing through, tens of thousands of customers. So yeah, place for both in my eyes.
If you think back that 10 years ago, the were not even obliged entities by the AML Act. This is now how long? 7 years. There was a completely change of viewing the risk management of players and of the whole operation. Before there was no criminal risk for the management if they have accepted a player was hiding his identity. And if you think now with AI, how easy it is to create a fake passport, it's impossible to review these images manually. So you need to have automated solutions, in my view.
Definitely, yeah.
Super, thank you very much, Stephen. Really interesting. My next question, and this the automated solution leads me directly to Rasmus. So automated solution, it's not just a question of the enormous amount of players which are now with operators, but also with the requirements of more and more regulations. So the Mindway system is mainly focusing on responsible gambling detection and or issue detection, and this with a unique approach, and it's compliant. Software is compliant in I would say all European jurisdictions already. So what solution do you offer for transaction monitoring, and what kind of input, which kind of data does it use?
Yeah. So when you ask a guy like me about transaction input and transaction or data input for transaction monitoring, we at Mindway AI look at it at a broader sense, because we provide risk, you would say risk assessment software to the gambling industry. Risk assessment mainly driven by player or gambling behavior detection in our game scanner, which is an AI-based solution, where we have invented the ability to combine human psychologist assessments into the detection, and for that, the whole idea is to create a much more accurate monitoring and detection. and that gives the gambling operator the opportunities to avoid bothering the vast majority of the database who show signs of no or low risk, and then on the other hand, taking care in different stages and different levels with different levels of automation if interested, of the very few percent in a normal customer database that actually shows a risky gambling behavior. And for that we use all the data we can get, basically. So it's monetary data, it's the gambling data, spin level data, it's gender, it's age. We are GDPR compliant, of course. It's payments, deposits, payment types, and all what you can imagine, use of safer gambling tools. We very often also integrate external data sources, could be affordability data, could be income statistics data, other reasonable, useful demographic data that makes sense for a risk assessment only, with underline on only. And also could be integration to partner solutions, where we have a conversation, for instance, with a company like Identify, who have developed an AI-based solution for detection of, let's say, risk assessment on the used language in customer service chats, for instance.
Wow.
So such detection could also be combined. We have also a plan to combine the risk score from our own self-assessment tool, Gamerlize. So obviously, the more data we can get, the better, because then we use the strength of AI. But with the human psychologist assessments, we can pinpoint the individualized issues much more accurate, to avoid false positives who are customers we shouldn't intervene, but also to find the false negatives who are customers in a less sophisticated solution you won't find as an operator. And finally, I would touch upon also that lately we have had different POCs, and which looks very good in different retail settings, like betting shops, like land-based casinos as well. So not only online anymore, we are moving into a omni direction. Let us put it that way.
I think this is a interesting information that you are now integrating also chat or information from chat, because we know that the customer service, they see they have a different perspective to players and their behaviors, and there's a lot of experience needed to detect problematic gambling behavior. So this is something which is supporting then your solution, also the customer service teams.
Yeah, definitely.
Coming to our next question.
I'll get
question.
into that in a short while.
What is actually then the output? So and how can operators make use of the resulting data? So as
yeah.
I think,
so you are absolutely right. So we have developed with the human supervision in the human psychologist or former problem gamblers as the ones training the algorithms. So we have an AI solution or AI approach where we basically have a human supervision and a human involvement in the AI. So no, let's say, black box AI with us. Also, we work on the concept of explainable AI. So everybody who trains it and uses the software should be able to understand the quite comprehensive analytics plots you see, maybe a little small, but lower right, you see this example. So the whole overview picture here on the upper left is that we have the expert panel on the left, based on neuroscience research and expertise in treatment and handling of problem gambling, and that feeds into the customer database, where we get the data as mentioned and do the monitoring and detection, and provide it quite comprehensive in all these different comprehensive plots. And that is for the as number one, giving the opportunity to a more individualized approach to the specific player behavior, in particular with the, let's say, more severe cases, as Stephen was mentioning, because we can in much more detailed, in-depth, see the challenges, and the algorithm works very, very closely with the dynamics between all these different markers. We detect up to 150 of them. We not only have the full long-term 92-day model in place, we also have, of course, at the other end of the spectrum, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, perfect. Seems something is wrong with my camera, maybe, I don't know. So on the other side of the spectrum, real-time alerts for the high spent short period of time. Soon we have to comply to the Dutch regulation, which says that we need or the operator needs to reach out to the customer within an hour. And in between, we also have a safety net where we look at the intensity of a one-day play of the player. So we have different types of safety nets to detect or to score, to profile the player in for the RG operational stuff. And then for the RG operation, customer service teams, whatever you call the guys who are actually doing something about the issues we have found in the monitoring, we have a very high sophisticated prioritized action view, we call it, but basically the to-do list on top of the monitoring to do what to do about the problems. So is it a severe case you need to call as a care call? Then we have in-depth plots that supports that for such sensitive calls, but also the wider groups of less risk but still some risk, integrated automated intervention is definitely the need, because in a 2% prevalence in a customer database of 1 million active players, that's still a lot of cases to handle on a daily basis. And from our position from highly digitized Denmark, we see a lot of optimization opportunities in more RG with the same number of hands, with the use of automation in earlier stages, but without, let's say, cutting out the human handling in the sensitive later stages.
Thank you, Rasmus. I can confirm 100%. We are providing the social experts on several markets according to the different regulations to operators, and it's impossible to deal with these kind of numbers in a manual way. So thank you very much. Welcome, Nikolas. Let me ask you my first question. It's the same question as to Rasmus, but here we're looking to a different area. We're looking into AML transaction monitoring. So, what solution does you offer with your transaction monitoring, and what kind of input does it use?
Yeah, thank you. So, we as MGT are more or less an aggregator for digital compliance solutions. So within our platform, we have integrated a bunch of KYC solutions. We have connections to several regulators in Europe and outside of Europe, logging databases and so on. We have third-party information systems like credit checks implemented, and we have our own monitoring and dashboard solution. The monitoring solution is called Power Comply. It's a monitoring and alerting system, which includes a customer risk assessment. Can be used for AML, but also for RG and fraud prevention purposes, and it's compliant across several jurisdictions. It's tailored for online and especially retail operations, and fully configurable per jurisdiction, and also the risk appetite, I think, is also important, of the operator. We developed the system on our own because there was no proper solution for the monitoring of land-based sports betting operations, and we are providing MLOs to sports betting shops especially in Germany, and we needed a system. And so we started to develop this. I think one of the challenges for the monitoring of the land-based sports betting operations is that the players can play anonymously. So the monitoring must be based on, for example, the shops. You need to have maybe other triggers to find suspicious behavior. And of course, the shops itself are also a risk to the operator. So you need to monitor the shops also on a shop level. So the data which we, and I can just repeat what Rasmus said, is that we of course use every data we can get. If we have, for example, KYC data, and we can of course reuse this data as well, the PEP status, PEP sanction list status, or adverse media information, and normally the data can be provided in real time via API, but also in let's say certain jurisdiction where real-time monitoring is not required. Also, a batch upload is possible if there's not enough time for integration, for example. The data can be delivered in the format that the client processes the data in their own systems, and we can do the matching then on our side, which is also an advantage and helps to lower the integration costs of our solution.
Thank you for this information about your system. Let me come to the second question. So what is then the output of your solution, and how can operators make use of the resulting data?
Yeah. Also here we are quite flexible. So the outputs are of course alerts, a customer risk profile based on AML and RG or fraud, a shop risk profile if it's retail, where we also include, for example, the geographical risk of the shop. So it's located next to a train station, next to a border, next to an highway, and so on. And also KPIs. KPIs based on the data which we have in the system and which can be used by the operator for certain purposes. The actions that can be triggered are based on the risk profile of the respective player, such as push notifications, emails, the limit automatic limiting of the player, or even blocking players. It's of course possible. Our system has a case management included and also a ticketing system to keep track of all the alerts, the high-risk players, and also the measures which have been taken. There are like thresholds, 30 days. For example, in certain jurisdictions, you need to wait until you can, for example, block the player, or you need to block the player when he has not provided the necessary information. We can provide the data as were shown here on the screenshot through our dashboard solution, or alternatively directly via our API in real time. And as I already said, depending on the data received, this can be used for fraud prevention or other use cases, such as generating reports, reports to regulators, reports to the management, which can, if we have the data, be generated via our system.
Maybe here the requirements for transaction monitoring, they are in AML, they are a bit clearer than for responsible gambling, because of the obligation of the betting shops and the operators according to the AML Act. It is necessary to implement a transaction monitoring not only by the gambling regulation but also by the AML Act. So the players needs to be supervised or monitored, and the shops as well. Super. Then see, we have a general question now for everyone. So how do you see the future of operational risk management? Let's start with Stephen.
Yeah, I think obviously listening to Rasmus and Nikolas, I think that the future definitely is in technology. There's no denying that. From an operational risk perspective, I wish I had them tools available 10, 12 years ago. It'd have made life a lot easier. But I think it's about finding that blend of, and now we're becoming more educated about the topic. I think that when we look back over how regulation developed, if you take, for example, let's take the UK market as a prime example, with the amount of settlements and fines that came out from very tight regulation. When you change regulation, you've got to give operators and you've got to get people time to catch up in a way. And unfortunately, it sort of happened backwards. Regulators set the regulation and then expect us all of a sudden to just have this technology available in 6 months. It just doesn't work like that. So for me, it's, keep doing the great work all of these tech companies are doing to help people like me stay out of trouble with the regulators is always good. And ultimately it helps the customers and it helps individuals. That stuff Rasmus was showing there on the screen, to have that level of in-depth of understanding a human, it's a whole different world to where we was, and that's only going to get better.
Maybe Nikolas, where do you think that the risk management will evolve in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think AI is the main topic. So AI components will be more and more important, and I think automatic decision making in this regards will be will help in the operational risk managers to focus on those kind of people or player which want to loan their money, which have gambling problems. So you can focus much more on those kind of groups. Besides that, I think that because of the several regulations and the specific requirements, it's important that as a multinational organization, you harmonize somehow the measures. And one option is to focus on global standards, and I think this is something which getting more and more important to, let's say, harmonize all the operations based on for example, a compliance or a risk management system based on an ISO standard, for example.
Thank you. So Rasmus, lucky you have an AI solution. So
yeah, well, correct. I'm also part of a standardization project of the markers of harm driven by the EU. I think when I look at it, I completely agree with you, Nikolas. The long run, there has to be more standardization, more higher standards on how these systems are developed on the standardization part. Obviously, there is a difference between money laundering standards and global regulation in that, or EU regulation. In the RG space, what we mainly focus on currently, there's kind of no harmonization. It's nation by nation, and what we have stuff in UK regulation that is illegal in UK, but legal and has to be included in other jurisdictions, vice versa. So obviously, there is some sort of difficulty in aligning until regulation is potentially more aligned. On the standardization, also, I think the challenge, as I see it, with a potential challenge or a potential con related to the EU markers of harm standardization project, which we are part of as Mindway AI, is that some in this industry, including all kind of industry stakeholders, could see this as the end result, which would actually lower the bar to some extent compared to what is already out there in the market. Whereas we see it as, let's say, some sort of basic standard that at least the system has to comply to, and that leads me into more higher standards on how this is developed, because our biggest, let's say, competitor in general in the market globally as Mindway AI is not our competitors, and all of them actually agree with me on that. It's in-house developed systems, and those in-house developed systems, there are definitely great in-house development systems out there, but they don't have to live up to the same standards as we as a provider do. And in particular, when you, as we do, have solutions running in 61 jurisdictions, that is 61 different regulations we have to comply to. And that sets another level of standards we have to because that's expected. That's we are contractually obliged to deliver on this. And when the Dutch regulator, as an example, outline June 2nd, new regulations coming into force October 2nd, then we have to be ready. Luckily, we had some sort of heads up. So well, we would likely have been ready anyway, but that's also even for us a challenge. And of course, it would be nice if we could get into a situation in the very long run where we were playing after the same rules and after the same standards when it comes to developing these systems. Not that I'm complaining, because we see a bright future ahead of us, and all is good. It's just a remark on what you just said, Nikolas, there.
I would like to add something, because we are providing MROs and other compliance functions to clients, and it's so difficult to understand which solutions are on the market, and that's one of the reasons of this format, Leaders in Compliance, so that we are showing valuable information about solutions on the market. We have seen lately a solution in a country we are operating in, and this solution is by far not up to the standards of the international standards, but it's promoted to a regulator. So the regulator seems to accept it, because maybe the regulator doesn't have the time and the background to understand what is actually an international standard. So if there would be an international standard, then the regulators, they could follow, and someone needs to be approved by the standard. So I can really fully agree and follow your arguments, Rasmus, that for regulators and for
And that was the exact reason we took the initiative as the first and so far only, as I understand it, provider of such systems, to ask a testing agency to test and validate our software. So we have tested our game scammer with GLI. So yeah, definitely agree.
Thank you. We take one Slido question. We are a bit over time already. So what are the main triggers applied in a typical AML case? How can technology and possibly AI mitigate the operational risk? So I would say the first part of the question goes to Nikolas. Please, a short answer, and the second part I would please ask Rasmus to answer the second part of the question.
Yeah. Unfortunately, there's not a clear answer to the first part of the questions. There are, I would say, different kind of triggers. Just to make it short, I wouldn't focus just on simple triggers. I would focus on the whole customer profile. So how many deposits have been made, how many payment methods have been used, where the player is coming from, where the money is going through, and have a comprehensive risk scoring to assess the risk here, and at the end it's a combination out of it.
Okay, Rasmus, how does AI support the mitigation of operational risk? Because the mitigation of risk, that's at the end what we are aiming for, that we have a solution which makes us compliant.
So actually we have, even though we have we are working on that, but even though we yet don't have specific, let's say, what normally you could consider as AML functionality, we have several of our operators who actually uses our plots to, because we have the same data as Nikolas just mentioned already for the RD purpose. So they use our plots and then have a work around on AML. So basically, and then I'll go address what Nikolas just said also from my perspective. It's a matter of the full picture. And what we wanted to create is the full picture of the gambling behavior. And if the gambling behavior then, let's say, is also integrated with some sort of money laundering behavior, obviously that's what we want to clarify the picture of with these, I mentioned it shortly before, 150 data points we do assess daily on each customer, which is then aggregated up to what we call our risk factors, but also in more broader sense called markers of harm, the spider web you just saw at the other slide, at the slide a few minutes ago, and then up to a full overall risk score between 0 and 100, and all of that is then, let's say, integrated into the operational parts where we can and will add in and have already added in alarms on different levels related to both RG, AML could also be a combo depending on the specific regulation in the specific country or specific business rules, or which thresholds and when you want to respond and react as an operator as well. So let's say an integrated approach where we also use algorithms for AML will likely be some of the future I see on this.
Super, thank you very much. So thank you, Nikolas, thank you, Rasmus, thank you, Stephen, for participating. And that's now our closing session for the virtual conference today. We have covered today really an enormous amount of topics. We came from, or we discussed transaction monitoring, we discussed marketing, we discussed the opportunity of opening a cannabis social club in a betting shop where there will be no license anymore in the future. So it was a really broad and I would say fantastic amount of topics and sessions with experts in all these different areas. So thank you very much to all of our panelists. Thank you to the audience to have been stayed with us maybe since this morning or haven't joined in the afternoon. Thank you, Gaming in EU, and thank you, ESA Guide, and I hope I see you soon. Bye-bye.